Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Human Intelligent Dialogue. Whether it's good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you're listening in or watching us here today, thank you for joining us. So, today we have the great pleasure of having with us today Dr. Patti Phillips, who's the CEO of the ROI Institute. And in one of our previous ones, you heard her husband and also the chairman of the ROI Institute. And glad to bring her here to have her provide some insights and perspectives as she's been going around the world, helping people kind of put a bow around the efforts, the human capital efforts that they're involved in. So, Patty, thank you so much for joining us. I sincerely appreciate it, and welcome to the Human Intelligent Dialogue.
Thank you, Edwin. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. So let's start off. For those out there that don't know who Patty is or how she started in this field, give us a little backdrop and context into all that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, not at all. I've always been interested in development and in people development and behavior modification, those types of things. But I came into this after a career with an electric utility. So I spent about 13 years in had several positions, never in the learning and development or human capital space. It was either procurement or was manager of market planning and research. My team developed electric utility rates, but there was always some element of demonstrating, the value of the work. And I kind of came up in that. I mean, my household, like growing up, it was about, okay, what's your purpose? I'm not concerned about what you're doing. Concerned about what you're accomplishing. So I sort of came up with that mindset. But when I was at the utility, also had that mindset and did that type of work. But I came into the human capital space, into this field, after I left the power company. I'd finished up a master's in public and private management, and a good colleague introduced Jack and me. And so Jack and I met at a deli called Chappie's. And we met, and the conversation was supposed to last for about an hour. It ended up lasting 4 hours.
Wow.
You don't, as you know, Edwin, you don't meet Jack without leaving with a stack of books, which I did. But one of the books was his 1983 Handbook of Training, Evaluation, and Measurement Methods. And it's that handbook that really put this concept of ROI and cost benefit analysis and levels of evaluation, really put that concept in the hands of learning and development. But he had also been working in the broader HR space. So he and I had a conversation, and I just loved the work that he was doing because it was research, cost benefit analysis, ROI. It was fundamentally good research, but it was research done in the context of organizations and in fields that I was always interested in but never engaged in. So that's how I got involved in it. Once we started working together, I got more and more involved with our clients and research and writing the books, and then eventually got more and more involved with Jack. And then eventually we got married. And then you know the rest of that story. His business became my business. His process became my business, my process. So it all came together. But it really is an amazing field that we all work in, and one that I never saw myself in because I was more on the business side of the organization. But it is a critical part of the business, and that's one reason that I value it so much, and that we can really demonstrate the value of the work we do in this human capital space and by investing in human capital. Whether you're in HR or L&D, we're all investing in human capital. And so it's just an exciting space to work in. And it gets more and more exciting every day, especially with the onset of AI and all the tech that we have to help us out. So
Yeah, that's really fascinating stuff. Interesting. Yeah, to your point, your conversation started for an hour, ended up four. And it's interesting too that Jack and I worked at Lockheed Martin, and you and I worked in the utility industry because I also back then, way back then, also, as a matter of fact, I think that's when I first got exposed to Jack's work. And tried to bring him in and tried to push the envelope in the organization, but people were like, no, not really sure. And it's interesting work that both of you and your organization is doing because one of the things I find fascinating, I teach a graduate org behavior class in Latin America for an American university. And it's funny when they asked me once, well, talk about things that are sort of relevant to Latin America. And while I did, one of the things I mentioned to them was, you know what? What I'm talking about is people stuff. And at the end of the day, I've been to the University of Shanghai, I've been to Europe, I've been to Canada talking about these concepts. And it's people issues or people issues or people issues, which is the same thing with you, the ROI issues. You were just abroad, I know. So it's kind of fascinating that this is not just an HR thing. This is, at the end of the day, a human capital issue.
Right.
So Patty, fast forward over the last 20, no, more than that, 40 years or whatever it's been now. What do you see today? And you alluded to one of them, but what do you see today as some of the emerging trends in human capital space and in the work that you're all doing?
Yeah, it's interesting. So much of what we see today is not too dissimilar from what was going on back in the 80s and on. You know that too, right? It's like, okay, here we go again. Some of the issues. But the big ones that we're seeing, of course, is the huge focus on culture. We've all known that culture plays an important part, a critical part, if not the most important part, of moving organizations forward and ensuring that people are working um, to the best. They're contributing the most they can. So we're doing a lot of work in the culture space. The work of the Institute for Corporate Productivity, I4CP, Kevin Oates' work, Jessica Kriegel and the group at Culture Partners. They're doing a lot of the research and implementation around culture, and then we're being asked to demonstrate demonstrate the value of some of the work that they're doing. So, a lot of focus on culture. Of course, the big topic is AI. You know, you can't turn the corner without someone mentioning AI. But what's the real value of it? And while there's time savings to it, and ChatGPT can save us time, a lot of time savings, not much investment there. What are we doing with that time? And that's the big conversation that we've always had when we look at the benefit of investing in people, time reduction. Well, what are you doing with the time? If we're not giving it back in productive work, is that adding value to the organization? So the work of AI, investments in AI, what is the value? And then another that we're seeing, and it's really interesting, um, is what is the real value of investing in people analytics? So this has come up for years. So none of it's new. It's just there's a lot of conversation about it now. But what is the value of measuring and evaluating and investing in people analytics? And it depends on how people are using the output, using the data and the insights. And much of the time, people are not. Now, much of the time they are, but where we come in is we will have people come to us and say, well, how do I show the value? How do I show the return on investment in people analytics? Um, and the first question we ask is anybody looking at your data? And if they are not, then it probably isn't delivering the value that you hope it is. So that's where we get into is okay, why aren't they looking at it? What are we doing on the front end to ensure we're delivering the data that we need to deliver? The same with technologies, not just AI, but the bigger technologies that we're putting into place and investing in. So I think those are the big trends. Of course, work at home. We're still trying to figure out what's the best, how do we best work together? And the whole conversation on work at home leads us to these conversations about, the cost of daycare. We're seeing a lot of question about is costing us more when we're in the pandemic, we managed these things. And now we're having to go back to work. Daycare costs they're just off the charts. Do companies need to invest in daycare and offer it up as a benefit? Well, let's show the value of doing that. So a lot of things still happening that have been happening. The big new shiny object is AI, of course, but a lot of focus on culture in the context of AI is big conversation. I was in Jakarta, as you know, I was out of the country. I was in Jakarta. That entire conference was around how do we create these organizations that can adapt to the changes taking place given AI and technologies, and what kind of leadership do we need so that we can adapt and we can adopt the technologies and really leverage them while ensuring we have the right people in place and people are getting what they need from the workplace. So it's all, I know it's a lot of rambling to the question, but we're seeing a lot of interesting things out there, centered around, culture and AI and sorting out best place and best strategy to get people to work and collaborate and get the most out of people and let them get the most out of their work and their jobs.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny you say that. The more things change, the more they remain the same. A lifetime ago, when I was in the service, I was educating leaders on communications. Fast forward to today, here we are, same cycle type of thing. So, having said that, and what are you seeing? And I agree with you. I've been reading quite a bit and writing quite a bit about that too. I mean, obviously, your forte is okay. Help quantify this stuff. So, how are you helping? What are some strategies you're bringing to your clients to help them make a difference in all of these changes?
Yeah. So thank you. Yeah, it's great question. And I think that, probably the biggest thing we bring to the table is it's not just about demonstrating value, it's about creating value from the beginning. So what we bring to the table is, a process and techniques and a lot of research, a lot of examples of where organizations are doing just that. It's shifting our mindset from an activity-based focus. Let's go buy the thing. Let's go invest in blank. Let's go get the next shiny object because we can. Rather, shifting that mindset to here's what we should be doing and the reason why we should be doing it, and thinking about the value you want to create up front. What are the problems and opportunities that exist in the organization that if we change them could ensure we're moving this organization forward? And then to create that change, what are the solutions and the processes that we can put into place that will help move that needle? And from there, how do we position those solutions, those investments, so that we can create the change and deliver the impact we want to and ensure we're using our resources efficiently? And then how do you demonstrate that you've achieved that? So we're really on the front end and the back end. Let's align these investments to the needs of the organization and ensure that we're investing in the right solutions. And then let's demonstrate that our solutions work and that we used our resources efficiently. And it's that latter part, that ROI piece, that we really try to focus on, but that's so misunderstood in the human capital space. People say, well, you don't need to show ROI. ROI is not a bad thing. ROI is saying we're using the resources bestowed upon us efficiently. We're getting as much bang for that buck as the buck itself. So you want those benefits to at least equal to the cost. So at least we're breaking even. And in some cases, you want those benefits to exceed the cost, which means you're getting more for the money. That's what ROI is about. But it's ROI in that single metric that tells us, okay, not only did people view this solution as pertinent to them, not only did they gain some knowledge, skill, and capability, not only did they change the processes that they put into place or change their behaviors, or not only are they collaborating more, but in addition to that, we've improved output quality, cost, time, customer satisfaction, job satisfaction, work habits, and innovation, and we've done so efficiently. That is ROI. So that's what we really bring to the table, is helping organizations create value by investing in people. And those investments could be, training or technology or AI or culture change. It could be, developing marketing. It could be enabling marketing. It could be any type of solution. That's what we're trying to help them with, because there is value in investing in our people. We just have to begin by creating that value and then demonstrating the value in terms that resonate with all of the stakeholders.
Yeah, and you make me think about, and you know this, having been in it so long, for forever, it's been, well, you're helping, it's touchy-feely. I don't know if it's really bottom line implications. And the good thing is you do address those, and show that, you know what, and culture is a perfect example. So here we are today, still even more so now looking at culture. How is that? If we're helping and creating more of an engaging workplace, how is that paying off? Ironically, I just read something that organizations continue today that they've always continued, which is downsizing. And I found an interesting study that basically said, bottom line, for every $1.27 that you're spending on downsizing, you're gaining $1. So basically, what the argument was, downsizing is not working because you're not getting the payback that you're looking for. So interesting. So you've alluded to some of these things, but now with the future of work, whether it's AI, hybrid, remote, some of those things you talked about, the whole changing workforce psychology today and the whole workforce evolution, what are your thoughts on that process there, and particularly with what you all do to help organizations out globally?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's rapidly changing environment for sure. I think that, it's a critical balance, right? We want to reinvent the organization while ensuring we have some balance there, that our people are working, they're working well, they feel good about it. Um, so there are some opportunities there. I think it's an exciting time for organizations. I think anytime that you have a little chaos going on, it's healthy. But there are opportunities. Again, how do you do this in the context of a work environment where people are now having to come back to work, even though even though we have demonstrated that work at home can work. So, how do you reinvent? How do you ensure we leverage all the opportunity that exists here in this work environment where you have half your people don't want to be there anyway? In fact, I was just having a conversation this morning, and in this city, we were talking, people are paying $60 one way on fuel to drive to work. Now, $60 one way doesn't sound like a whole lot until you think about you're going to work and from work. That's $120, and you're doing it every single day. That begins to add up. And then if you're paying daycare on top of that, you start losing money by going to work. So we're just in an interesting environment. Now, AI can help us, right? There's a lot of things AI can do. The question is, if we can leverage AI, what is the risk associated with that? Not just compliance risk and the risk outside the universe, but the risk to your employees. If you can use AI to do the job, do you need the employees? Well, that can't make the employees feel so good because they know that's out there. So if you're an organization, if you're a leader in an organization and you're looking to AI to replace a job, are you replacing a job with the intent of replacing the individual? If that is the case, give the individuals an opportunity to develop skills that will help them on the outside. Be transparent about it. Or are you replacing a job with the idea you're keeping your employees and placing them somewhere else? Okay, if that's the case, what are you doing about it? So I just think it's interesting and exciting to see the different challenges that are going on. The question is, do we have the leadership in the organizations to help make that transition, to make that or create that, transform that organization? Do we have the leadership there? Which brings me to the conversation around leadership development, which is always top of mind. The unfortunate thing is that a lot of times we don't focus on developing leaders until it's too late. And those leadership skills that are so important at the top, they're also important at different levels in the organization. We should think about leadership development earlier in the career than we do now. And then a last just random thought I had, I was having a conversation with someone today, Rob Toomey. I don't know if you know Rob. I mean, he'd be an interesting person to have on your podcast. But he and his wife, Carly Toomey, they are co-founders of a platform or process called Type Coach. So he and I were having a conversation about what is going on in the universe around soft skills. And he talked about interpersonal competence. He said that is the big challenge that they are seeing. Now, he's been around as long as Jack and I have been around. He and Carly have been doing their work for as long as we have. And so he said that interpersonal competence is huge because what they are seeing and what all of your listeners are seeing is AI can help with hard skills, right? It can help with those hard skills, those tasks, but it can't help with the interpersonal. And if we are moving toward this organization where we want more collaboration, more connection, more personal relationships. And that's what's going to help us move the needle in our lives and in our business. Then we need to really focus on that. And he said they're finding in organizations in which they work, there's a big gap that they're used to working the job that AI is replacing. We've got to shift our focus to more of that interpersonal relational skill building. And
Mhm.
again, that begins at the beginning, not when they're in that senior level position. So anyway, those are just some thoughts. I'm not sure if that's where you wanted to go with that, but that's just some of the things that we're seeing and that's top of mind with us in our work.
No, hey, I wanted to hear from you, from your perspective, and what you're seeing out there. So I appreciate that, and it's interesting because you reminded me of something I saw. IBM did away with 8,000 jobs, I think, and then it had because of AI, and then it had to go back and rehire because of AI because there was other skills. And there's some other many studies out there that talk about AI is not going to be able to be compassionate, empathetic, listen, all those kinds of things. It may listen, but it's processing things differently, and it's constantly learning based on the conversations they're having with us or the interactions they're having with us. So, in closing, what would be some action? And you've kind of already started to talk to this, but in closing, what would be some actionable advice you'd give to organizations and managers and HR professionals out there overall across the globe?
Yeah. Well, advice is what it is, right? So take this for what it is. I'm always wary when I give people advice because they live in their space. But what I believe that managers and leaders should do is one, really focus on culture, but focus on it at the beginning. Too much of the time, we try to change people and their behaviors when they've been in the organization for years. We need to focus on culture at the talent acquisition side. So think culture at the beginning when you're hiring people. Make sure they fit your culture, they fit the culture you want to move toward. But then, make sure that they have the option to buy into the culture at that moment in time. And I say that because we've done studies where there's been culture change and the ROI of that initiative might be negative because what happens is the employees realize they really don't value the culture, or the organization finds that they don't value the employee. But typically, it's the employee finds they don't really value the culture of the organization, so they leave. It's like we've got to start at the beginning so that the employer has an opportunity to ensure that the person's going to fit, but also the employee needs to have the opportunity, or the potential employee needs to have the opportunity to opt out, knowing what the culture is. So that's one thing. So culture, but culture starts at the beginning. I think something else that leaders could do is really, especially L&D and HR, think about development early, not just skills, basic skills for those entry level positions, but let's think about what leadership development or interpersonal skills or soft skills can we start developing early as people join the organization and move up in the organization. Leadership is not just a top of the organization issue. Leadership begins now. And in a time when we are seeing more collaborative teams and cross functional teams, the opportunity to present yourself as a leader is increasing. So you may not be a manager of a department, you may be that individual contributor and maybe entry level, but you could be an amazing leader on a project. Let's give people an opportunity to develop as leaders earlier. And then the third is show the value of what you're doing. So whether you're a leader, a manager, individual contributor, think about value and not just value because you are busy. Busy doesn't get it. Everybody's busy. And we can help you stop being busy by cutting out what you're doing, thereby cutting out the job. Think about value in terms of how pertinent is what I'm doing to my function or my company? What are people learning from me? What are they doing with what they know based on the interaction they've had with me? And what impact is that having? What is the consequence of that? So think culture early in the stage, think leadership development early in the career, and think value creation and demonstrating that value in terms beyond the activity of what we do.
Yeah, thank you for that, Patty. You remind me of a few things. I've got a book coming out later this year called The Boss: Behaviors of Smart Supervisors. And initially, I was thinking, the CEO has got the biggest impact on the organization. But then I revisited that and thought, no, it's that frontline supervisor who has the biggest impact on the worker, because they're dealing and interacting with them day in and day out. And there's the whole psychology of how am I dealing with my boss and how's my boss dealing with me. So it's important. And to your point, all of that stuff that usually has been labeled touchy-feely or soft stuff really has bottom line implications. There's a reason there's these organizations out there that are great places to work, and it's usually because what type of environment are you creating there? And particularly when we know that people are stressed out, if you can create a healthy environment, that costs money, by the way, when people are stressed out. And particularly that one that you talked about is spending $60. It's one way. So that means it's about an hour drive coming in and an hour drive coming home. All of that stuff has cost, human cost. And so the more organizations start to do something different going forward, the better they'll be off. And lastly, it's the piece of that I've seen many times over, and I know you've seen it, and that is you're the best HR person, accountant, engineer, you're the next boss. And then we don't prepare them for that new set of skills. And so that's where I think organizations have a great impact. So number one, thank you, Patty, for coming on. I sincerely appreciate it. I really welcome your insights and your perspectives. You sort of validate some of the things I'm reading and hearing out there. Interestingly enough, you alluded to AI several times in our conversation, and I'm finding more and more books out there and studies being written about how AI is doable, but it's only going to complement. You really still need the leadership skills that you've been talking about. So thank you for the work that you're doing, going around the world and trying to help these organizations put a number on what's it cost to help these organizations be more human-centered, more human intelligent, be more human focused at the end of the day. Because in the era of AI, you're going to need HI. So thank you for all the work. And I know you've got a litany of books between you and Jack out there. So for my audience, definitely pay attention here. You're going to see her contact information here at the end. And again, thank you, Patty, for coming on.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks. We're glad that you stopped by to visit. We're in the business of helping organizations in the growing era of AI become more HI, and that is become more of a human intelligent workplace. And we do that in a variety of ways. We can do speaking engagements. I can come in and speak to you either at executive retreats, at offsites, keynotes, things of that nature, to kind of share with you some of the trends that are taking place and what the implications may be for your organization. Sort of in a way, put a mirror up to your organization and say, these are the things that are happening. Are you ready for them? Are you doing something about it? So that's just one way. Another way we do some work with organizations is through executive coaching, helping from VPs to frontline supervisors, those to soon to be in supervisory, high potential individuals, help them in their development. Also do leadership and team development work. And along with that, we use instruments to help organizations from a consulting perspective help themselves, whether it's the Human Intelligent Workplace Instrument or questionnaire to take a sense of, hey, how are we doing in this space? Also, organizational change readiness questionnaire. Are you ready for the changes? What are you missing based on some of this information? And lastly, we also look at leader behavior effectiveness questionnaires. How well are your leaders doing? How do they assess themselves? And how are the workforce assessing them too, whether it be 360 or others? So we're here to help, particularly in this ongoing changing era that organizations are facing, a time of uncertainty, a time where the workplace or the workforce is expecting different things. So hopefully you'll reach out to us and let us know how we can help you out. You can look at some of our information that we have out on our website, some of the various podcasts, some of the articles and videos that I've put out there. And hopefully those will percolate and create some thoughts and reflective moments to think about. Maybe we need to have a discussion with the Human Intelligent Workplace. Thank you very much.